Hi, welcome back to Collecting Canadian Cavalry and Armour. Today we're going to take a look at one of the khaki drill uniforms that I have for the Windsor Regiment. Actually, I'm sorry, for the Essex Regiment Tank. Now these uniforms came up in the late 30s and were issued to all the different regiments. You can find some with a Highland cut for for those Scottish regiments in Canada, that kind of thing. But today we're going to concentrate on this. Now, according to a discussion I had with a friend of mine, who's been a long time collector, he was telling me that these things were not intended to have brass shoulder titles on them. And in truth, the Essex Regiment Tank actually did order one run of the khaki slip-ons that just say Essex. They're very hard to find. I'm still looking for one for my collection, but that's what dress regulations said would be on here. And again, we talked before on how many reserve regiments, or militia regiments at the time, kind of did their own thing. It was up to the commanding officer. Okay, so this is a case where the Essex Regiment Tank did their own thing. So as you can see, we have the sometimes harder to find Essex Regiment Tank brass shoulder titles on the epaulets, and we also have the brass collar badges for the Essex Regiment Tank on this particular uniform. Now, if you look at any historical designs for the badges that Colonel Masson designed, he was the first CO, he was an architect. He built many houses, or designed many houses and buildings down here in Windsor. He was the first CO. He's World War I vet. I've got a lot of documentation, like some of his notebooks and stuff in my collection, which is kind of neat. Anyway, he did design buttons for the Essex Regiment Tank, but they were never produced. So on this particular uniform, you'll find the regular general service buttons, and we'll take a closer look at the badges and stuff. So we have this wonderful khaki uniform to the Essex Regiment Tank. Now, you can see on the right arm, where it belongs, is we have the tank qualification badge. Coveted, because that meant that you were a tanker. And as we already know, tankers are cool. So, this uniform actually I got from a friend of mine, John Straw, who found it locally here in an antique shop. And then he sold it to me. Probably at a nice profit, but that's okay. It was worth it. You'll also find on the arm here is 3 service stripes. So this fellow, was in for a little while. So on closer inspection of this uniform, because as a collector, guys, always check the pockets. Always. Good buddy of mine up in the patrol area, Dave Irvine, picked up a wonderful patrol dress jacket, checked the pockets, and inside the pockets was a beautiful World War II era First Hussars officer's badge. Quite a score. Good on him. Anyway, he's a good guy, so I'm glad that happened to him. So, when I was checking the pockets, I came across the guy's regimental numbers. ERT 622. So, as I said, as I like to say, I try to tie in a uniform to an actual person. So what I did is went through the old Black Beret. We covered this book before. Wonderful book. Everybody should have a copy. And at the back, we have all of the service numbers for everybody that's ever joined the regiment. So, of course, I went through looking for ERT 622. I couldn't find it. Now, I believe the reason for that is whoever originally owned this ended up joining the active service company, and they got new numbers, starting with an A, which was down in the Army District down here in Southern Ontario. So that's why I can't find it yet. What I'm going to have to do when I have time, maybe once I, old and gray. Wait a minute. Anyway, I'll get down to the regimental archives and try to dig in and figure out who this cat was. But it's a neat thing to do, try to find out some stories behind this guy. Now, in a future episode, we'll cover reunion stuff. Reunions are great. You bump into guys that you probably haven't seen in a long time that you've served with and that type of deal. But we've got a program that was autographed by a guy, and I was able to dig in the archives and found a picture of him in a trench with 2 other guys behind a Bren gun. So again, it ties in an artifact with the person. Now, going to have this picture here. We looked at this one before down here. It's the first class at the Canadian Armoured Fighting Vehicle School in Borden. And you'll notice, we'll take a closer look at with the camera at this, but you'll see that all the guys that are wearing the black beret with the Essex Regiment Tank badge, excuse me, are also wearing the khaki uniform with the brass collar badges and this. So, I mean, again, it was a regimental thing. So, this is a nice lightweight uniform that they wore during the summer, because don't forget they were bringing in the wool battle dress in the late 30s, right? And they're hot as hell. They really were. I mean, I can remember wearing those when I was in Army Cadets back in the 70s, right? So anyway, this was much nicer. It's a well-made garment. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any makers tags or stamps or anything like that. These things, we do have the this mark here, and guys, this is important if you try to track down Canadian stuff. You'll see a broad arrow with a C. Now, the broad arrow meant that it was British ordnance mark. So that is on just about everything from uniforms to helmets to weapons, everything. Broad arrow with the C designates it as Canadian. So we know this is definitely a Canadian garment here. Like I said, it's well made. We've got an inside pocket. And here there's checked, and wonderful piece of local Essex Regiment Tank history. And like I said before, that was the regiment that I served most of my time in the reserves with. So finding something like this with all the original cloth badges still on is really nice. A lot of people like to strip the uniforms, right? So I mean, that's it's always a challenge for us guys that are collecting uniforms and stuff, right, to find everything. Of course, the brass stuff was gone, the shoulder titles and that. Shoulder titles run something like $100 or $150 for a set these days, which is, expensive, but not nearly expensive as some of the other stuff. And then you've got the collar badges, so to put those together. But it was nice. It was fun, and now we've got a wonderful uniform for my collection. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode on a kind of a unique uniform jacket for the Essex Regiment Tank, the old khaki drill. And don't forget, the black beret, lots of good information in there. Okay, you guys, go and get those badges, and happy collecting.